You are now listening
You are now listening to the Black Male Educators Alliance podcast.
Lifting our voices.
Lifting our voices.
You are now listening to Lifting Our Voices, a BMEA podcast. As you can see, it looks a little different. This is our newest season, our newest rebrand of the show. I am Jerry Lawrence, and we are going to get to the rest of our hosts in just a second. Black Male Educator Alliance founder and CEO, Dr. Curtis Lewis. Can you tell us a little bit about what we're trying to accomplish here with BMEA?
Yes, sir. I am Curtis Lewis, the founder and CEO of BMEA. I'm happy to be here, fellas. Happy to be here. Excited about the work that we've been doing since 2017. So we're a fairly new organization, but the impact we've had has been tremendous. We're all about recruiting and developing, engaging Black male educators in our schools. We believe they're crucial to the work that needs to be done in transforming our schools. And we'll be talking about what we mean by transforming schools throughout our podcast series. But looking forward to talking to you fellas today.
Thank you. So again, I'm Jerry Lawrence, one of the hosts of Lifting Our Voices. This is my first year with BMEA. I'm director of marketing. I have been in education for 10 years, and during the day, I work as a high school administrator. Just want to swing it over to co-host Christopher Waston.
Thanks for the intro. Appreciate being here. Long time coming. We've been working on this relaunch, and we're excited to bring. We are excited. No, I'm joking. You're gonna get us at home, So we're going to talk, in our natural states here on the podcast, keeping it real, and also just talking about the things going on. But as Jerry said, I'm Chris Waston, director of data, and I do a lot of stuff here at the organization. I should have probably remembered the exact title, but doing whatever I can, from web design to helping with the marketing, and really just helping us achieve our goals and missions. And like Jerry, it's my 10th year in education. I'm a high school assistant principal in my hometown of Detroit, Michigan. Feels kind of weird saying that, thinking back, like, wow, I'm an assistant principal, and I didn't really like school.
Made it.
Growing up. Yeah, right, exactly.
Made it.
I don't think anybody dreams about being an assistant principal when they're kids. So.
I was kind of a little shy, wasn't it? Dang, it
No.
was a little shy.
People are like, you say an assistant principal, then, good for you, though.
Wow.
It's different. Mike, talk to him.
What's going on, y'all? Mike Payne, president of BMEA. I've been in education for about 7-8 years. In Atlanta, Baltimore, and now here in Detroit. And I'm a school administrator as well in the city of Detroit. And like I said, I've been working with Chris a little bit on the podcast, and I've been working with Curtis with BMEA for about 3 years. So, I'm happy to see how far we've come. It's been beautiful. It's a beautiful ride.
Great.
Payne was my guy too, by the way. Just I remember we were having this conversation, and I was having these thoughts in my head, and it was like, Scott, let's do it. So shout out to Mike, man.
Yeah, we took off.
Chris also. Chris been, we've been working together for like 25 years. So,
Yeah.
And for those of you who've been with us the whole way, obviously Chris and Mike are the OG host of Lifting Our Voices podcast. So again, there of course are some familiar faces with us. All right. So typically when we're not reintroducing the show, giving you a new format, we're just going to start with a weekly check-in, see how everybody was doing, how everyone's weekend went. So Mike, what were you up to this weekend? I know we're still in the pandemic. It's not a whole lot people can do. But what did you get into?
Just hanging with my son. I didn't do too much. I closed on a house today though, so that's the big news I got. So
hey, congrats, man.
Congratulations, man.
Appreciate it. Put some roots down here in Michigan, and
you
excited to have y'all boys over for a drink and some. We can celebrate the new space.
Yeah, I like that tea. I like that green tea.
I got you. Yep, there'll be plenty of green tea there.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's up. Thinking about my weekend. What did I do? It was weird because I think it was what was that Friday, and it was like 70 degrees, or was that
Yeah.
Friday. Couldn't believe it. and then it just got cold. I feel like I've been cold ever since. You know, I was at the school on Friday doing some testing, and then I was enjoying the weather, and then next thing you know, it's just been going down ever since. I feel like so. Besides that, it was a good weekend. Watched some sports. My Spartans were embarrassing, but it's gonna be okay.
Man, that was rough.
So, Curtis, I know we're filming this on Monday, everybody, just so that you know. So the Bears did not get a chance to play yesterday. They're playing tonight. So, Curtis, you didn't have football yesterday. What did you do?
Man, worked.
Okay.
I actually was in Chicago for the weekend. I had to go down there for some stuff. And so I was actually driving back, and then I got back, and then I just worked and grind. But it was nice catching that Seattle game, man. That Seattle Sunday night game was real good.
Yeah,
it was good. I'm looking forward to the Bears' victory today, though.
Go
victory Monday.
Well, it'll be victory Tuesday for you anyway. So, similarly, for those of you who don't know, I'm a big Baltimore Ravens fan. We had a bye week in preparation for the Pittsburgh Steelers this coming weekend. So we're excited about that. Got to get our offense back on track. But yesterday, we were in the group chat texting, getting ready for the show. And this was during the Tampa, I keep wanting to say Oakland, but Vegas Raiders game. And obviously, we saw our guy, Tom, well, not my guy, so maybe some of you guy, Tom Brady kind of went off. And so I guess the conversation became, is it really the player or is it the system that, makes championships happen? So I'd be curious. I know some of you shared your thoughts yesterday, but we got to share with the people now. So I'd be curious what you all think. Is it the player? Is it Tom? Or is it Belichick and the system? Chris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is a good question. I think it's a combination of both, but I think Tom has proven that you can't discount the player. I think sometimes we assume it's the system because even, Cam Newton is my guy. I actually like him as a quarterback. He's obviously not better than Tom Brady, to be clear, but okay, no one's saying Cam Newton is better.
Where you about to go with this? I was like,
no, well, what I'm going is that Cam Newton is a good player. Wasn't he an MVP? He won MVP a few years back. But you just see that it's not translating in this new system. And I had some high hopes for the Pats. And I think what you've seen Tom Brady do is go to a team that wasn't very desirable. Now they got some players, let's be clear, but I don't think people expected them to be 5-2. I think they're leading their division.
They got some players.
We got some players already.
They got some players.
What I'm saying, kind of remind me of LeBron a little bit.
So and I was going to mention that. To your point, your question, Jerry, whether it's the team, whether it's the player or the system, just depends on whether or not the person likes the player or not, right? So if it's Tom Brady, it might be him, but if it's Jordan, it might be the system. We ain't gonna go down that road.
Mike, could it be that the player can be the system?
No, it can be that the player is good and it is a good system, and it's hard to separate the two because they can fit so well together. But I think we also have to remember that like the Patriots weren't winning like the last 2 years. Like I think Brady saw the writings on the wall. Belichick saw the writings on the wall. A change had to be made, and there was going to be a downturn. I think Tom Brady came out on top in this situation because he went to an organization that had the right pieces, just were looking for something a little bit more stable, right? Tom Brady's not the youngest of quarterbacks, but he's not a turnover machine. He can manage, he can lead a team. So he's a good fit for a team that had everything else, in my opinion, right? The receivers, not necessarily running backs, but he got some young stars running back. And their defense has really turned it around. So, Cam is out there in New England with what? Bill Belichick. It's just them two. So that's part of the problem.
Well, so I actually heard this on ESPN today. I think Ryan Clark said it, so I'm not going to take all the credit for it. But what he said was, really, Brady's a better GM than Belichick, right? He goes to Tampa Bay, figures out how to get Gronkowski back, right? Convinced Fournette to show up. Obviously, he's got AB on the way. No matter how anybody feels about that, he's good. So it looks like they're positioning themselves. If it all works out, it's a lot of pieces to fit together. But I don't see how they don't end up in Tampa for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's an AB thing. I ain't gonna even go there because it's not that kind of show. But like, I mean, come on, man. Like, at what cost? That's not even what we're talking about. At what cost do we get like I go beat a bunch of people and I just abuse women, but you can play ball. So come on, hey, come on, man. Like, now I hope they lose the rest of the year.
Well, I bet you do because Chicago's in the NFC. So, with that being said,
let's back into the fact that he's like a womanizer. He's
yeah. And if Tampa Bay loses, there's a shot for the Bears to figure it out. So,
sure.
with that being said, we love to hear what you all think. Drop, is it Brady? Is it Belichick? Put that down in the comments, and we look forward to seeing what you guys have to say. BMEA has a lot going on this month. An initiative, or I guess more so a workshop, a fellowship. Mike, can you tell the folks, what BMEA has got going on? It's a lot right now.
Yeah. So Curtis came to me a few months back about really wanting to start an early teacher fellowship, right? Getting our new teachers the right type of training to be successful in the classroom. So October 31st, we're starting our first session of our early career teacher fellowship. We sent out an application a few weeks ago. We got like some outstanding candidates. We picked 15 of the strongest, and we're really excited to get started. And we're going to take them through some culture responsive pedagogy and training, and really just dig deeper into what education should be looking like for our students, and making sure that we have really strong, effective Black male educators in the classroom.
So I got a real quick question about the fellowship. So between Chris, Curtis, or Mike, feel free. What are you guys most excited about with this fellowship?
I'm gonna say, I'm big on development, right? I think oftentimes we talk about recruiting Black males, but we don't do anything with developing Black males and just developing teachers in general. So I'm super excited about like taking these 15 early career teachers and just developing their not only their mindsets, but developing their pedagogy, their instructional practices, their philosophy around education. Like, I'm super excited about that and just seeing their growth over time. That's what I'm most excited about.
And I'm looking forward to just the brotherhood. We actually had another, fellowship that we did earlier this year during the pandemic. And we conducted it over Zoom, and some of the feedback was just amazing. I'm talking career-long, educators who were, just so impressed and impacted by the work and the workshops. And really, you saw so many relationships form against the brothers virtually even. I'm excited about that because we have a new crop. And I feel like, we're going to really lock arms. We really lock arms with educators across the state. And it's like to get that many like-minded men in education, it does something for us, even as, leaders and developers of the fellowship. So I'm looking forward to the brotherhood and just the fellowship, the act of fellowshipping with other Black males.
Shout out to B Lane too, Brandon Lane, one of our another leadership team member who's been spearheading the development and the work around our work in a particular school district we're working with, along with Payne, and also just our fellowship. So just want to send a shout out to him as well for his work.
Brandon. So Mike, I know you mentioned the fellowship, and then there's an event for the general public.
Yep.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so BMEA, since we've started in 2017, 2018, we've always had quarterly events. So this November 7th, we have an event, special guest, Chris Emden, right? And the focus is on where do we go from here, right? Reimagining the classroom. Obviously, we're in this virtual space and this virtual learning. It's changed a lot of the dynamics in schools, and a lot of people are worried about, the future of education for their kids. So we invited him to talk. He's a dynamic speaker, and I know we have a clip that we're going to show really quick. But just get his opinion, his voice, and kind of re-spark people's energy around education.
Yeah, I think it's almost November now. For a lot of folks are in there, finishing up the second month of the school year, and we're getting to that point. Starting to get darker. Obviously, a lot of us are virtual, trying to figure all of this out, and so. I think it's really a timely workshop that we're putting on. And for those of you who maybe don't know the energy that Chris Emden brings. Like Mike said, we do have a clip, so we do want to play that just to give you an idea of what you'll be getting that early Saturday morning.
What if I told you that your premier responsibility is for creating space for emancipation, not the delivery of your content area? That you are like, but I'm a science educator, but I'm a physics educator, but I'm an arts. Nobody cares, bro. Look, that was all an exercise to get a credential. Nothing more. And we have to be able to deconstruct this thing. The whole process of schooling, we're not just talking about K through 12, K through 16 and 20 is so flawed. Folks come out of these joints, all it does look, what degrees get us often, more than anything else, is hubris and a perception that we are better than those who don't have it. And that's hard for some folks because your whole identity is wrapped around your certification and your degree. Like, if you ain't have that, where would I be? And I'm telling you that all that was an exercise in making you feel adopted into the tradition of oppression. The school system is constructed for you to be able to have an allegiance to the institution that disempowered you to begin with. If you remember, just go back if you can, particularly those of us in education. You go through the schooling system. Y'all remember that C? You front now like you don't remember that C. Like, C's get degrees for a lot of folks. Like, you just hustled through and got through that joint. You remember that professor? You're like, I don't like this dude. I like, whatever, I'm gonna just do what I gotta do and get through it. You remember all of that, all of the daily oppression you underwent to get the credential and degree. Then you got out of it and then you celebrated it. Your mama bought you flowers and you got balloons. And all of a sudden, the flowers and balloons erased the trauma. And then you went back into that system without interrogating that traumatic process and went on there and replicated it. You see how sick that is? The degree for me has only been a platform to allow me to do what the ancestors called me to do. If Chris ain't have a PhD, Chris will still be doing the damn work. All it does is allow you to be able to have a platform to do what is right to do. That's not a piece of your identity at all. Those of you who have allegiances to institutions and degrees in your alma mater, you better, half of them held slaves to begin with and have not done the restitution for that conversation. So if your allegiance is to an institution and an organization who has not paid restitution to folks who they oppressed historically, you are recruited into an army of folks being the new versions of the colonizer.
So as you can see, it's going to be a spirited conversation. We look forward to having Mr. Emden join us on November 7th, early 9:30 in the morning. Set your alarm clocks. Are we able to talk about next week's episode of Lifting Our Voices, or is that we're gonna keep that to ourselves?
Yeah. Let's we're gonna talk about it at the end, but let's talk about it now too.
Well, go ahead, Chris. You do it, Chris. Make the announcement.
Yeah. So next week, a week from today, if you're watching this live, on November 4th, Thursday, November 4th, we're gonna have Chris actually here on the Lifting Our Voices podcast. You know, crowd goes wild. Yeah, he's gonna be on here live. We'll be at 7 p.m. Eastern. So catch us on our Facebook page. We're also going to get it on YouTube as well. But yeah, we're looking forward to having Chris here on the podcast. We're going to get to know him better, talk about some current events. And also, we're going to be talking about the event coming up on Saturday, November 7th as well.
So appreciate that, Chris. So again, a timely conversation, as most of us are trying to navigate, the education space in the middle of a pandemic. And that's kind of what brings us to our next topic, the impact the pandemic has had on the education space. And so we are going to have a guest in just a second, but I wanted to just get your thoughts. We're in it every day. How has the pandemic impacted you, or, what's the approach that you've taken, understanding that we're in a pandemic, so that we can keep this show moving in the right direction? And anybody can open up with that one.
Yeah, I think about the amount of students that are missing that one-to-one interaction with adults that can support them, right? I think about students that, just those little quick interactions, maybe that reminder in the hallway that some students are missing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Pan. Go ahead, brother.
And I mean, I think that the biggest thing for me, I wonder is like really what is the emotional, mental impact on our kids during this pandemic, right? I think as an adults, we're trying to make sense of it and trying to keep things as normal and as possible. And I know that the transition from in-person teaching to virtual teaching has been a struggle because people have been trying to keep it too normal. Like people have been trying to take so many of the old traditions of the classroom and put it in virtual space, and it doesn't work. But also, I'm just worried about the kids' mental space. You know what I mean? I think this is like you're learning about the world as you grow, and then you get hit with a pandemic that no one prepared for, and you're watching these adults not really handle it well. You know what I mean? And so that's what's on my mind most of the time. Truly, I think this schooling thing is almost secondary to the health of our kids' mental space. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Curtis, you had something?
No, I was just gonna say, I think to Payne's point, man, when I look beyond, it's hard to look beyond the mental state, right? Because I think that's important. Like that's huge. Mental, emotional state. My son is definitely struggling, right? Both of my kids are struggling. What I'm excited about, I know that's hard to say excited about, but I'm gonna say it. I'm excited about how it's pushing us to think differently. What would be disappointing is if we don't like carry that energy into when we return, right? And so like I'm on that mission of like, here's the opportunity, when there's controversy like this or traumatic situation like this, usually something good comes from it. And so I think the good that can come from this is seeing the importance of technology and making sure that kids had it. Like all of a sudden we got money and the kids got one-on-one laptops. Like why that wasn't important beforehand. Right? Making sure kids had connectivity at home. Wow, why that wasn't important beforehand. So it's cleaning up slightly, long way to go, some of the inequities and things that exist in our communities. However, I also think it's pushing schools and teachers and school leaders to rethink what really is truly engaging kids in school. And that power dynamics is so shifted now, right? So those relationships are important for real, because now the kid got to control on whether A, you're going to see my face, B, I'm going to show up to your class. Now, a teacher may say, hey, well, if you don't do that, that's impacting your grade. Okay. Right. Right. It's just really making us think. So I just hope we take this energy that we have now around like let's brainstorm, let's think about how we can do this different and do it.
So for me, it's all. I just feel like you never can make a good decision, right? Everything is always the best bad decision, right? That's just how it's felt so far. So to give you an example, I was walking my dog before the show, and I have a kid who lives around the corner, and her mom was pulling out of the driveway. She saw me, we spoke, I really wish we could get back to school. My daughter needs the one-on-one, so badly. And it's like, absolutely, me too, right? But then you think about the science of it all. And then let's say the kids come back, somebody's asymptomatic, they take it back home, they live with a grandparent gets infected, they die, right? There is no good decision to be made. And so I think what people don't quite understand is that every day we show up to work and we're trying to make the best bad decision that we can possibly make in order to keep things stable and to keep things moving in the right direction. And so that can be tough. But I think everybody is going through a tough time right now. It's just all about how you keep things in perspective and again try to make the best bad decision you can make.
You can mask up. That'd be a good decision.
Well, that is you're absolutely right. Wear a mask.
And to clarify, they some schools are open. In some states, it never changed, and those COVID cases are going back up. And people are like, "Well, the COVID cases are going back up." Yeah, y'all open schools. What do y'all think was going to happen? It only dropped because it was summertime.
in places that don't necessarily believe in the pandemic, so it's a double. And
Jerry, before we go on, think about the craziness of adults not believing in science, but also teaching kids.
Isn't that something?
It's crazy.
That's truly something.
No comment. Hey, I want to clarify something, Payne. When you said it only went down because of the summer, it only went down because kids wasn't in school. It wasn't like the virus one. I want to make sure we ain't saying the same thing somebody else said. People get that messed up. I do what you were saying. I want to clarify for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
So just so we're all clear, BMEA does endorse wearing masks. Okay,
we
so
do.
we're all
We
clear.
absolutely do.
Okay?
We do.
We can't endorse everything, but we endorse
We
wearing
would
a mask.
endorse that for sure.
So, like I mentioned earlier, we do have a guest. I do want us to bring in Clare McKenna. Clare is a middle school principal at University Prep Art and Design Middle School, located in the center of Detroit. Clare, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. I just want to start truly by thanking all four of you for having me here for your relaunch episode. I'm really humbled to be a white woman who is here on the Black Male Educators Alliance Lifting Our Voices podcast. So this is my 9th year in Detroit education. I have moved through teaching, instructional coaching, assistant principal, and now, like you said, Jerry, I am really lucky and privileged to be the middle school principal here at UPAD Middle.
So let's just go straight to the elephant in the room, okay? So obviously, as you mentioned, you are a self-proclaimed white woman, okay, and you are the principal in what I think most people know in Detroit as an all-Black middle school. And so, how does that impact you as a school leader and or your leadership in the building?
I think that ever since I have been here working in Detroit as an educator, I'm constantly aware of and owning and acknowledging my whiteness, my white privilege, and I also think just what my white identity represents, and that it represents hundreds of years of white violence on Black and brown bodies, and I show up as a white woman, and that whiteness can't be erased and shouldn't be. And so that's something that I'm always thinking of in my leadership, critically examining my actions, my beliefs, my biases, to always be dismantling the characteristics of white supremacy culture, and to constantly be making decisions and actions that are aligned with anti-racist, co-conspirator beliefs, actions. At our school, we really are working to examine our practice really critically. One of the things that we care most about is culturally responsive education. And you can't call yourself culturally responsive if you're not constantly searching for the presence of historical forms of oppression that exist in our schools. And one of those historical forms of oppression is white women. And so that's something that I'm always thinking about, and always working to decenter myself and to make sure that my leadership is co-constructed, it's community-based, and it has the voices of the entire community rather than my voice.
So I have one follow-up. I know we kind of gave you a list, and this is not necessarily on there, but I do have a follow-up to that. So that was a very thoughtful response. Thank you. Now, taking all of that and thinking about the pandemic, right? The context of the pandemic. Obviously, we had a lot going on over the summer. Did that make you go deeper in your reflection of your leadership?
Yeah, that's a good question. Absolutely. I think when we consider, Mike talked about this, right? When we consider the pandemic, it's impossible to separate that from trauma. I think, like, just for being young and Black in America, our students experience trauma every single day, right? Then the pandemic hit, and we know that the pandemic disproportionately affected Black and brown Americans, and especially here in Detroit, right? And then we think about the civil unrest and the civil crisis that has existed really since this country started, but especially the heightened, I think the visuals of that state sanctioned just murder of Black men and Black women while we've been, in our stay at home. And And then you just think about the effect of that trauma on our students, right? And the effects, like when you study trauma and you study trauma in the brain, and you know that it leads to like depression and lack of focus and these things that make school harder, and that make wanting to come to school harder. And then you see your white female principal, right? And so it really made me reflect on not being silent. So all through the pandemic, really stating my beliefs, really stating our beliefs as a school, right? What we do and don't stand for. That if we say we're culturally responsive, right, that means that we have to celebrate and honor our students to try to disrupt the trauma that school has inflicted upon Black and brown students since school's inception too. And so we really focused on how to create spaces where students can be whole, but I don't think that wholeness can come without the honest admittance of what is happening in our country and what white supremacy culture has done and why it continues to exist, right? And so that was constantly at the forefront of my mind every time I was writing family letters home, every time we were making Instagram videos to try to get our kiddos to come to school. It's just something that I think is ever present when I'm considering my role in our community.
I think that's good. I mean, I agree with so much of what you said, even just as a Black man. You know, one thing we talked about leading up to this show, just think about the impact of the pandemic. We thought about, you know, the impact of grades and how do you assess students, also engage in them. And I came across an article, surprisingly, the New York City Department of Education just updated their policy on grades and the impact of grades, saying that basically students can't be, you know, penalized for missing work or attendance. And I'm just curious, what are your thoughts about that policy, and just how are you as a school leader approaching the task of, you know, assessing students in such an unprecedented time, considering all the factors that we know about this time for our students in particular?
I think that actually goes back to what Curtis said earlier, that schools have been doing and practicing like historically traumatizing, oppressive things to all children, but especially to Black and brown children forever. And grades is one of those things. And so I think this is allowing us to ask this question of what is actually the purpose of school and what is actually the purpose of grades within that structure. And so I'm choosing to see this more, I think Curtis said, like as an opportunity or a silver lining, right? To critically re-examine, like, what do grades mean? And if grades mean that you're showing up and turning assignments in, that is not an assessment of your knowledge, right? And I think that when you consider that, that's where the question should lie, right? What is the purpose of grading? And then, Chris, when you add on this layer of the trauma that our students are experiencing right now, right? And we know that trauma causes your brain to be able or to not be able to retain information as easily, right? It decreases your motivation. It decreases your ability to focus. It actually makes you want to self-isolate. And then you put kids on Zoom all day. Like, of course, we're entering into these conversations of, oh, wait a second, maybe what we're doing isn't working, even in this virtual space. Like, maybe we haven't, in just this, 6 months, suddenly figured out how to really engage kids and create virtual learning that allows them to show up as their whole selves. And so maybe we should slow down and step back and not be penalizing their grades when we as the adults haven't figured out how to do this.
That's real.
That
is real.
Thank you for that. So obviously anybody who's an educator knows that in whatever city, the educator circles are not that big until you run into folks. So Claire and I have run into each other quite a few and had a few conversations about just how to engage students, really before the pandemic and since. So we are curious, how at UPAD Middle, University Prep Art and Design Middle School, have you all gone about engaging your kids and families?
Yeah, I think I know you guys are having Dr. Chris Emden on next week, and there's an event coming up, and he is one of my like go-tos when I think about engagement. And I was listening to an Instagram live that he was doing, and he was like, throw that word out, like stop talking about parent and student engagement, right? Like we need to start talking about co-creating like ecosystems of community that allow everyone a space in that community. And then you never have to worry about student engagement or student or parent engagement, right? Because like just the words parent or student engagement almost like pathologize you into thinking that students and parents aren't engaged.
Yeah.
So like we have to like fix it and figure out a way to engage them. Like what if we threw that out, right? And co-created spaces with them where they had voice, where they held the right to actually like be a member of the community. Schools don't do that, right? Schools say like, we have the knowledge, you all show up when we ask you. And so I just think that we really try to focus on, and I say try because we have a long way to go, right? Jerry, I know that's something that you and I talk about, but creating the opportunities for conversations to happen, right? Creating the spaces where voices can be heard. So we do something called Community Crew once a month, where any member of our community can show up and engage right now on Zoom in a conversation about how school's going, right? What are they liking? What aren't they liking? Students, teachers, parents, they show up and like, they keep it real, right? But then you're engaging in these authentic conversations and you're all getting better rather than one leader trying to make decisions, right? And so we really try to figure out, where do those other opportunities exist? Where can we engage everyone into feeling like they have a right to be here, they have a right to belong, they have a right to have a voice in this community that we're all showing up in.
Awesome.
Love it.
So, Claire, we're in November. We're in that month where you don't really get any days off until Thanksgiving. The first quarter in a lot of school districts is about to end. And this is the last question. So, if you need to pause to have to think about it, because it wasn't on the list. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you evaluate how your school community is sort of their resilience right now within what we're dealing with? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you evaluate your school community?
What do you put in the 1? What do you put in the 10?
Oh, sorry. 1, we're throwing the white towel in.
Got it.
And we could do this for another 4 years.
Yeah. That's such a good question. I am really excited about quarter 2. Yeah. I'm feeling like our community, our students are showing up. Like let's stop all these conversations about what the kids aren't. No, like our kids are showing up. They're showing up more than they did in the spring. Like they are on Zoom, like they're ready, right? So like let's start there. And I'm thinking about everything that we've learned in this first quarter, right? This first go around, if you will. And I'm just excited to get better for quarter 2. And so when I think about where our kids are at, our school has an amazing dean who has been working to really create culture in crew on Instagram. We've got monthly all school crews. We did Wild and Out last month. This month we're doing Verses. We've got every other week we do crew challenges where, we did album cover recreations. And I'm not gonna lie, I was super proud of mine. And like everybody's involved, right? And so I think about what we've learned, which is that when you are joyful, when you create a space for kids to be kids, and when you talk about something that they want to talk about, right? You give them the space to talk about it. Better yet, you're not the one talking about it. Like, magic happens. And like, that sounds so corny, but like, it does. Like it because it's our kids, right? Like, they're full of magic.
Mhm.
And so I'm really just thinking about how to bring that continued engagement and joy into Q2, into our classes. I mean, our teachers have been working their butts off. I'm going to say that for sure. Our families have, man, the way that our families have shown us grace over this last quarter, I continue thanking them, because I'm like, y'all have been patient with us through the technology issues, through the schedule changes, through figuring out what synchronous and asynchronous time looks like. Like, I couldn't be more proud of what our community has done and how it's came together. Our big goal for the year is UJIMA, which is collective work and responsibility. And so, Jerry, I'm gonna flip your question, and like, if I was to rate us on like an UJIMA scale,
Perfect.
like we would be at a 9, and I only say that because like I never really believe you hit the 10. Like, I think you're always striving for it. And so I truly am fired up about Q2, because I think we can continue to work harder for each other.
Absolutely.
I
And
like
we
that too. I like that. UJIMA. Let's get it.
I think what we want to leave it there, Claire. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
For all of
Yeah,
your
great.
thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you.
Gentlemen, I don't know if you have anything you want to leave Claire with.
Continue doing the good work. You know, you are a white woman doing this work, right? And that's great, because I want good people doing this work.
Yeah.
There's some folks who look like me that ain't doing what they need to do. So keep doing the good work. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Take care.
See you. Take care.
So that brings us to the end of the relaunch of Lifting Our Voices, a BMEA podcast. Gentlemen, how we do?
All right.
I think we did pretty good. I mean, you know, Mike went, you know, took him off screen for a minute. He backed on.
Well, that's like the elephant in the room. Like, what happened to Mike? Like,
My computer just like, you know,
like gotta go.
I got kicked out. I got kicked out of the club. That's all.
What's funny is that he was missing for a second, and you know, I'm just like, all right, no problem. But then I was like, I need to text this dude, make sure, you know, how say
Man, I got kidnapped.
right.
I got kidnapped. Nobody came looking for me, man.
Live, just got kidnapped live. Like,
So, Mike, we are happy you are safe and sound. Again, to Claire's point, you never know what you're going to get in 2020. But you know, on our scale, on the BMEA scale, maybe this is a 6 or a 7. We got a lot of room to improve, and we will, because that's who we are. And so, Curtis or Mike or Chris, I'll leave it to you all to give the reminders about what we got going on, who's coming on next week once again.
November 7th, Chris Emden. Make sure y'all register. BMEA.org/events. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on IG, BMEA of Michigan. You'll see all the information there. We'll see you there on Saturday.
Yeah, and also
our fellows too, real quick. I'm sorry, Chris. Congratulations to our new fellows as well, who
Yes,
were also listed. So they're getting started with us on Saturday. So shout out to them.
We would love to bring them on the show, have a conversation with them.
For sure.
But before November 7th, Chris, you want to get us to November 4th?
Yeah. We have next week. We're gonna be right back here, Facebook Live with Chris Emden. You know, so definitely tune in. We'll be monitoring the comments. We may take a few questions. Right, we want to ask Chris a question live, so we're gonna really get to know him a little bit. And he has an interesting journey. You know, if you have heard him speak just about being a science educator, his passion for hip hop, and just overall for students. He's an author of a great book that you should, you know, essential reading for teachers, for white people who teach in the hood, and everybody else too. So I'm looking forward to having him on. So definitely check us out next week. We'll be live with Chris Emden. And I think, is that everything?
I think so. So we will see everybody in a week. Stay safe. Wear a mask, of course.
Wear a
again,
mask
yeah,
and go vote.
Wear
Wear a mask and vote.
Oh,
Those are two things we endorse: wearing masks and voting. Those two things.
Oh yeah,
We will see you all on the day after.
that's gonna be an interesting day.
Will be an interesting day.
Thank you
All right,
again for joining us. You all have a great evening.
All right.
You are now listening.
You are now listening to the Black Male Educators Alliance podcast.
Lifting our voices.
Lifting our voices.